SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
Surf Excel නම් භාගයයි මාසයකට වඩා රිදි සෝතයි.
Tonight, the ball is rolling. Indian Foreign Secretary visits the north, also inspects the Trincomalee oil tank farm. Latest study, 9 new core post-COVID symptoms identified, most likely among the hospitalised and women. Third world problems. The UK fuel crisis continues as the government gives special visa for foreign drivers, with military tanker drivers also set to be deployed tomorrow. All that and much more coming up on First at 9, this Sunday the 3rd of October 2021.
Lever Ayush Kaha Sabang Sandak Wage Babalan Pivituru Samakata.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammik Ekanayak. Now then, Indian Foreign Secretary Vardhan visited the oil tank farm in Trincomalee today as part of his 4-day visit to the island. The Indian Foreign Secretary is scheduled to meet President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa, as well as Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Piris for bilateral talks tomorrow.
Indian Foreign Secretary Vardhan arrived in Sri Lanka for a 4-day official visit last evening, following an invitation extended by Foreign Secretary of Sri Lanka Admiral Professor Jayannath Colombage. This morning, Shringla was at the temple of the sacred tooth relic of Lord Buddha in Kandy. After concluding his visit in Kandy, the Indian Foreign Secretary then visited the oil tank farm in Trincomalee for an inspection. After Shringla's visit to the oil tank farm, the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka tweeted that Sri Lanka Indian Oil Company has briefed the Indian Foreign Secretary about the development that has undertaken at the lower tank farm and the possibilities for further strengthening India-Sri Lanka energy partnership to enhance Sri Lanka's energy security. The tank farm built by the British initially had 103 tanks. However, 99 remain at present. In 2003, the then government leased the Trincomalee oil tank farm to the LIOC on a 35-year lease. Since the LIOC only uses 15 tanks, successive governments, including the incumbent government, have attempted to move for a joint venture to renovate and develop the remaining 84 tanks. The job, however, requires heavy investment. Concluding his inspection visit at the tank farm, Indian Foreign Secretary Vardhan then made his way to Jaffna. Further, he will be meeting Foreign Minister Professor G.L. Piris for bilateral talks tomorrow. Shringla is also scheduled to meet President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa as well.
Now, it was revealed today that new studies identified 9 long COVID, or also known as post-COVID symptoms, to take place among COVID patients who have recovered even after 90 days to 180 days after an infection. Those symptoms are predominantly prevalent among previously hospitalized former patients and women.
The lockdown is largely over, though the curfew comes back on each day from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. All business activities are gradually returning to what they were before, and so are hospitals. With there being a marked fall in the new COVID cases and deaths, some of the major hospitals such as the Sri Jayawardhanapura Hospital, the Colombo National Hospital and the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children have been able to return wards once dedicated for the treatment of COVID patients back to their original state. But even when at its peak, the present COVID wave did little damage to Sri Lanka compared with other countries. President of the Sri Lanka College of Pediatricians, Professor Shaman Rajendrajit, is happy that though the country faced issues with medical oxygen supply, unlike other countries, no child in Sri Lanka had difficulties in obtaining oxygen. Health experts have been constantly reminding people that falling new infections doesn't mean the country is out of the woods. What's more, even COVID patients who recover from the virus cannot relax. Medical experts globally have now recognized the development of what is known as post-COVID symptoms in at least 37% of people contracting the virus. According to the World Health Organization, some of the most common COVID symptoms reported among post-COVID patients have been shortage of breath, cognitive dysfunction, and fatigue. However, Sri Jayawardenepura University's Allergy Immunology and Cell Biology Unit Director Chandima Jivandara says that a new study has defined 9 core long COVID symptoms occurring 90 to 180 days after COVID-19 infections. Among the 9 symptoms, anxiety and depression are the most reported post-COVID symptoms, with as much as 15% of former patients diagnosed with the condition. Other symptoms include breathing abnormalities, abdominal symptoms, chest or throat pains, cognitive problems, fatigue, headaches, muscle pains, and other pains. Professor Jivandra added that the post or long COVID symptoms are more frequent in those who are hospitalized and are slightly more common among women. In the meantime, with the reopening of the country, Minister of Tourism Prasanna Ranatunga said that plans are in place to attract a minimum number of tourists to the island.
අපි බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා නොවැම්බර් මාසය වෙනකොට දිනකට සාමාන්‍ය සංචාරකයෝ 5000ක් තමයි අපේ ඉලක්කය. ඒ ඉලක්කය සපුරා ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා. අද ලෝකයේම සංචාරකයෝ සංචාරණය සීමාවන් තුල කටයුතු කරන නිසා අපේ බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන ඉලක්ක වලටම යන්න පුළුවන් වෙයිද කියන එක අපිට නෑ. නමුත් අපි උනන්දු කරවන්නේ අඩුම ගානේ දවසකට 5000 6000 අතර සංචාරක ප්‍රමාණයක් ලංකාවට එයි කියලා.
Health officials urge the general public not to be confused between the resumption of schools and child vaccination program, as they're two very different things. In addition to these comments, President of the Sri Lanka College of Paediatricians, Professor Shaman Rajendrajit, said that even if schools and preschools are to reopen, they will not have a health impact on the country, as the majority of the adult population is already vaccinated.
Health authorities are currently conducting the first phase of the child vaccination program targeting children above the age of 12 who are suffering from comorbidities. Officials at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children say that since the program kicked off on the 24th of last month, over 3,000 children over the age of 12 with comorbidities have been immunized. In addition, they expressed hope of being able to finish inoculating this age group with the first dose of the Pfizer vaccine in the next 2 to 3 weeks and begin the second dose administrations a month later. Subsequently, children aged 15 to 19 would be next in line to be vaccinated, which would be later followed by children aged 12 to 15. That leaves the question, what of children below the age of 12?
Vaccination of children below 12 years is a new thing in the world. There are few trials that has been going on. There are only few trials that has also been published in the recognized literature. We are awaiting further details of those results and those studies, and once we finish with the 12 to 15 years old vaccination program, at least the recommendation, then our scientific committee will assess the data and evidence and will again decide whether we need to vaccinate children below 12 years as time goes. Right now, there is no decision to vaccinate children below 12 years.
Meanwhile, health experts say that people should not get confused with the resumption of schools and the vaccination of children, as they have no bearing on each other.
The preschools also will be started, and the Education Ministry and the Ministry of Health is also in agreement to start these things. Preschool children are not going to get the vaccine very soon, or at least in the near future, because the evidence are not there. So that the only way to protect them from getting infection is practice adequate hygiene, adequate social distance, and wearing a mask, and keep on advising children. Children are easy to be taught and they will understand the situation if somebody explain it to them very carefully. There are a lot of preschool teachers have a lot of experience in this matter. So protecting them is a very important thing, because it can cause problems unless we are going to be very careful. The other aspect of this is, since the significant percentage of adults have already been vaccinated, there is a minimum chance of opening up schools and preschools to have a major impact on health of this country.
In the meantime, despite various assurances and clarifications offered repelling the notion that vaccination leads to impotence and subfertility, youth in the 20 to 29 age group continue to distance themselves from the jab. The authorities believe that there is a concerted misinformation campaign worked off by the opposition in this regard.
අපිට ඊයේ සහ පෙරේදා දින දෙකෙත් ෆයිසර් එන්නත් මාත්‍රා ලක්ෂ 4 ලැබුණා. ඉදිරි සති කිහිපෙදිත් අපිට එන්නත් සෑහෙන ප්‍රමාණයක් ලැබෙන්නේ නියමිතයි. සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයට මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් උපදෙස් දෙන බෝවන රෝග පිළිබඳ කමිටුවක් තියෙනවා. මේ කමිටුව නිර්දේශ කළාට පස්සේ මෙන්න මේ දිනේදී ආරම්භ කරන්න කියලා අපිට පුළුවන් පාසල් ළමුන්ටත් එන්නත් ලබා දෙන්න. ඒ සඳහා අවශ්‍ය එන්නත් මේ වෙනකොට ලැබීම පවතිනවා. විපක්ෂයට සම්බන්ධ മന്ത്രിවරුන්ගේ උන්ගේ හිතවතුන්ගේ සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ඔස්සේ තමයි මේ ප්‍රචාරයක් දියත් කරලා තියෙන්නේ තරුණ තරුණියන්ට මේ එන්නත ලබා ගන්න එපා කියලා. ඉතින් ඒකට අහුවෙච්ච යම් පිරිසක් තමයි මේ ඉන්නේ එන්නත් අරගෙන නැත්තේ. ඉතින් අපි ඉල්ලනවා බොහොම කාරුණිකව අසත්‍ය ප්‍රචාර වලට රැවටෙන්නේ නැතුව හැකි ඉක්මනින් මේ අවුරුදු 20-30 කාණ්ඩේ පිරිස Tamanට හිමි එන්නත ලබා ගන්න කියලා. මගින් කිසිම සෞඛ්‍ය අවදානමක් මේ තරුණ තරුණියන්ට ඇති වෙනවා කියලා නම් පෙන්වලා දීලා නැහැ අද වෙනකම්.
Now, in other news, Secretary to the Ministry of Technology, Janthati Silva, believes that Technopark projects will be a game changer for Sri Lanka. Addressing a webinar recently, he went on to say that projects such as court automation will bring transparency to the country's legal system, as each and every proceeding will be recorded as per automation.
Technology and science is the only way that this country can be developed. So when you're talking about our national program, we have several other areas that we have planned. One is the communication, Gamata Sannivedana program. And also we are going to fiberize 10,200 odd schools by next year. This is going to be a national project. So connectivity is one of the biggest things. You all know the digital signature, then the Cyber Security Act, Data Protection Act. All these are in place and it's about to be implemented very soon. Parallelly, as we are doing some of the largest projects ever handled by this country, we are 100% sure that the unique ID project will come into being next year. We have already started the Technopark, passion of His Excellency the President. We have already started the Goal project. A new company by the name of Technoparks Development Private Limited has been formed, and we are laying the foundation for Goal next week. We are starting Kurunagal, Kandy, and Nuwara and Habarana. I assure you that these parks would be much, much better than any of these existing parks in the world. We want major companies to come and house their operations. This is going to be a game changer in this country. One other project that we have taken on is the court automation project, which will bring a lot of transparency than any of these developed countries that we are boasting. Every proceeding would be video recorded. This will bring huge transparency on everything that we do as well as on legally.
A $110 million loan has been approved by the Asian Development Bank for Sri Lanka as additional financing for the ongoing efforts to develop the primary healthcare system in the country. The bank's health specialist for South Asia said that the pandemic has revealed vulnerabilities in the country's healthcare system and those issues need to be addressed.
The Asian Development Bank has approved a $110 million loan as additional financing for the ongoing health system enhancement project that's currently being worked off to improve the primary healthcare system in Sri Lanka. The project, approved in October 2018, is upgrading primary medical care units and division hospitals in central, north central, Savaragamu and Nuva provinces of the island. It is also strengthening health information systems and disease surveillance capacity, as well as supporting policy development, project management, and capacity building in the sector. ADB health specialist for South Asia Dai Ling Chen said that healthcare services and facilities are more important now more than ever, and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has revealed vulnerabilities in the country's healthcare system, and those issues need to be addressed. The scope of the project, meanwhile, has been expanded to provide additional support to include and strengthen the country's COVID-19 response. It is expected to scale up the capacity of at least 25% of secondary and tertiary level hospitals to treat and manage COVID-19, with the 1990 suicide ambulance system also being upgraded to all districts. ADB, meanwhile, will provide an additional $3 million from its Japan fund for poverty reduction on a grant basis to improve the efficiency of Sri Lanka's pre-hospital ambulance system. In the meantime, a meeting between the Director General of the Asian Development Bank, Kenichi Yokoyama, and Minister of Education, Dinesh Gunawardana, was held recently at the ministry. Yokoyama had said that the annual meeting of the ADB for next year will be held in Sri Lanka. During the talks, Minister Vardhan had expressed gratitude for the $400 million aid that was granted by the ADB under the Secondary Education Sector Development Programme for the development of the general education and higher education in Sri Lanka. The ADB Director General had expressed satisfaction over the projects implemented in the island. He had also mentioned that the ADB expects to provide more aid for Sri Lanka's education, higher education and vocational training projects in the future.
We will see you shortly after this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the International Monetary Fund's Executive Board is set to intensify its probe of Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva this week by separately interviewing her. Investigators say that she pressurized World Bank staff to alter data to favor China. The IMF board will be questioning lawyers from the WilmerHale firm tomorrow about their World Bank investigation report. The report alleged that Georgieva, as the bank's CEO in 2017, applied undue pressure on staff to alter data in the flagship Doing Business report to benefit China. Georgieva, who has strongly denied the accusations, will appear in person before the board on Tuesday, the day in which she is set to deliver a virtual speech about the IMF and World Bank annual meetings from the 11th of October to the 17th. The interviews could prove pivotal in either building or eroding IMF shareholder support for Georgieva. Now then, market experts predict an increase in the profit-taking at the Colombo Stock Exchange in the coming week. The all-share price index closed 17.64 points lower last Friday to end at 9,442.30, while the S&P SL20 index of more liquid stocks gained 4.73 points to end at 3,539.55. Now here's Dimantha Mathi with market expectations for the week ahead.
In the upcoming week, we feel that since the market was continuously up for 7 consecutive days, there could be a bit of further profit taking similar to last Friday. So with that, we feel that there could be some selling pressure, especially on some of the retail favorite counters that was having a lot of buying interest and were the primary cause of the strong bull run in the market. However, there is a likely shift of investors to some of the more fundamentally sound counters that have not really moved in value. So most fund managers, institutional investors are likely to move in that direction. So we may see some of the retail investors also moving in that direction. So that could be a change in line of thinking. So there could be mixed reactions overall in the market. Turnover levels, however, likely to be moderate to high levels, and number of transactions also we feel that overall activity may remain in the high territory.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson insists that Britain's vehicle fuel shortage is driven by demand and not by supply. Petrol supply in the capital is under 20% of the normal supply, and the country's road haulage industry is short of about 100,000 truck drivers. Experts say that about 20,000 truck drivers had to leave the country following Brexit, contributing to the driver shortage. But PM Johnson blamed the situation on decades of low-wage immigration, which he said drove down wages, putting Brits off becoming truck drivers.
After a weekend of petrol and diesel panic buying in the United Kingdom that led to traffic gridlock around fuel stations, the British government insisted yesterday that it had a grip on the situation and that normality would return soon. But for many, the situation does not look so.
Spoken to sites in Wales, for example, in Scotland and Northern Ireland, and they say it's a very much improved situation. Fuel is readily available. But London and the South East have been impacted, I'm afraid, especially at some of the BP sites and Shell sites around London.
In fact, the level of petrol in London is less than 20% of normal supply. Part of the reason that resulted in this situation was the fear of a shortage of truck drivers led to a rush on petrol pumps, draining supplies within a number of hours. The industry in the UK is 100,000 drivers short. The government, meanwhile, has introduced a special visa for foreign drivers and is trying to unblock the backlog of 40,000 truck license applications.
On the one hand, we've got Brexit, we left the EU, and 20,000 European lorry drivers had to leave the country because they weren't welcome under the new immigration rules. We had the pandemic, which meant that 40,000 trucker training tests were cancelled because of social distancing rules. And we've got an ageing population of truckers, many of whom have decided to retire. The government has absolutely not faced this problem down. We've been telling them about this for literally years, and they keep saying it's your problem, you sort it out.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, however, says that the country's vehicle fuel shortages were being driven by demand and called on motorists to return to normal buying habits. Speaking yesterday, Johnson said that he understood the infuriation and frustration caused by the fuel queues at filling stations.
I would say that they should go about their business in the normal way, insofar as they possibly can. I appreciate how frustrating it has been, how infuriating it has been for people. The situation is stabilising, but it's a problem that has been driven really by demand, not by supply, though obviously we're taking all the precautions that we can.
From tomorrow, military tanker drivers will be deployed to deliver fuel. The government said last week that 200 military tanker personnel will complete their training over the weekend.
What we have now is a system that allows us to control immigration, and that gives us flexibility. We can open up our markets if we need to, and of course we'll keep everything under review. But what we don't want to do is go back to a situation in which we basically allowed the road haulage industry to be sustained with a lot of low-wage immigration that meant that wages didn't go up and facilities, standards, the quality of the job didn't go up. So the weird thing is now that people don't want to go into the road haulage industry, don't want to be lorry drivers, precisely because we've had that massive immigration approach and held wages down and held the quality of the job down. What you're now starting to see is, for the first time in over a decade, you're seeing wages going up around the country. And that is fundamentally a good thing. That's what we mean.
Now, North Korea today slammed the United Nations Security Council for applying double standards over military activities among UN member states. The country's state media, KCNA, made the claim amid international criticism over North Korea's recent missile tests. The council met behind closed doors on Friday upon requests from the United States and other countries over the North's missile launches. The meeting came a day after Pyongyang fired a newly developed anti-aircraft missile, the latest in a recent series of weapons tests, including the launches of a previously unseen hypersonic missile, ballistic missiles, and a cruise missile with potential nuclear capabilities. The director of the North Korean Foreign Ministry Department of International Organizations said the UN Security Council meeting means an open ignorance of and wanton encroachment on its sovereignty and serious, intolerable provocation. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.